Hello, everybody. How has your conference been so far? Has it been good? You're all hanging in until the bitter end. I so appreciate it. Or move chairs and do not sit down. Bad idea at this hour. This afternoon, we're going to be talking about how to be more pleasant. This is kind of funny. So, I was talking to my husband about, I will trip on that and slide right off the stage. I was talking to my husband about, what sessions should I do this year? And he's been doing a lot more homeschooling lately. He's like, I think you need to do on how to be nice. It's like, okay, well, I'll survey people. So I sent out an email, and I'm like, which of these talks sounds most appealing? I sent like 8 options. 80% of the people said how to be more pleasant. And I was like, I think we're onto something here. That QR code on the screen, I'll show you again later, so you can ignore it for now. Are any of you familiar? I know some of you are, because I just talked to you about the work with Barbara Cooney. She made picture books. She's an award-winning illustrator. Miss Rumpus is my favorite of her books. Maybe, might be her most famous. She actually won 2 Caldecots for Oxcart Man and Shots of Clear the Fox. If you ever see, here's the short story. If you ever see a picture book illustrated by Barbara Cooney, you should buy it. A lot of them are out of print now, but they're fabulous. And I wrote this new picture book biography about her because she was a mother of 4 who did all of this creative work right in the throes. For example, she set her workstation up in the busiest room of the house. She had 4 kids coming in and out. And I'm just so inspired by the way that her kids talk about her. So, let me rewind. I host a podcast called the Aloud-Revival, and on this podcast, I wanted to do a special episode about Barbara Cooney because her books are so fabulous. So I reached out to her son, who I did a little online sleuthing, and he's like, you don't want to come talk to me about your mom, do you? I was like, yes. I go, no. Like, very intimidating, right? So I kind of gather up my questions, and as he's talking, I am just floored by the way that he talks about mother's vivacity for life and the beauty that she saw in the world. But also that she did, in fact, set up this workstation in the busiest room of the house. And then when they would come in with a mouse or a lizard or a skinned knee or were hungry for a snack, he said she always stopped what she was doing and just looked right in her eyes. Now we all know there's probably no way she always stopped what she was doing and looked right in his eyes. But that is actually how he remembers her. And I was so inspired by this idea of motherhood that it felt very much like the homeschooling life. Her children all went to school, but if you read this picture book biography, you'll see what I mean. She grew things in the garden with them and took them on hikes and picnics and did all these kinds of memory-making things, but just based out of her own joy for living. And I thought, that's how I want my kids to describe me. But that's not necessarily how I think they would describe me many days. And I even wonder if we were to zoom forward and someone was to ask, oh, so you were homeschooled. Did your mom enjoy homeschooling you? I kind of wonder what they would say. Based on this day, right? Well, depending on how your day goes. So let's take just a second to think about this. How do you want your kids to describe you? Zoom forward, pick any one of your kids. Imagine they're having dinner with friends 20 years from now, and someone says, what was your mom like? What was your dad like when they were homeschooling? What are some things you want them to say? You can just call it out. So fun. What else? Joyful, happy, loving, interested in them. Wow, I mean, that is probably most kids wouldn't say that about their parents these days, I would bet, right? What else? Safe. Patient, safe, inspirational, adventurous. Let me grab my Kindle out here because I wanted to read you something. When I think about how my kids are going to remember me, the thing I know I want them to say is my mom enjoyed being with me. And sometimes I I said this on the first night, now I can't remember. But Sally Clarkson once told me that she would homeschool all her 4 kids into adulthood, right? And she said that for years they would have these family dinners that were so fraught and stressful, and one kid always got sent to his room, and she was so frustrated. It was not this ideal picture of dinner, family dinner, like she thought it would be. And her kids, now that they're all grown, when she asks them about their favorite family memories, they talk about these wonderful, warm family dinners. They're just their happiest childhood memories. She's like, really? Yeah. That is not my memory. But we do have this opportunity. I think a lot of times we don't feel like we are, I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it fast enough. I meant to bring the actual book that has an actual bookmark in it. Let's see. No, it's all right. Oh no, that was it. Okay. Yay. This is good. Okay, most of the time I think what we really, really want is we want our kids to remember that we want to feel enjoyed by us and loved by us. And we want to be on homeschooling when we kind of have a vision. When I asked you, you came up with all kinds of positive words, but it's really hard when we're in the thick of homeschooling to live in a way that makes us respond in a way that they'll remember us that way. But there is something we can do. Today what I want to do is I'm going to share with you what I think is the single most powerful tool that I've used to be a more pleasant mom, to smile at my children more often, and so that they can grow up feeling like mom was happy, inspiring, joyful, patient, interested in me, all of those things. This is the piece I want to read to you. This comes straight out of Meg Meeker's book called The 10 Habits of Happy Mothers. Write it down, put it on your list. You definitely want to read it. It's an excellent book. She didn't homeschool. She's a pediatrician. She has 4 children. It's a phenomenal book. Let me just read a little piece. You are more precious than you know. I know this because in my 25 years as a pediatrician, I have gotten a peek from behind your kids' eyes. I can see you as they see you. I have heard the excitement in their voices after you have praised them. I have seen your kids define you as their hero when you were in the other room. I've heard them cry over your hurt, laugh at your jokes, and pull their hair out because of your stubbornness, which, by the way, they appreciate. I have literally read the value that you hold in your kids' lives all over their faces and through their body language. When you walk into a room, your son changes immediately. He relaxes because you're there and he feels safe again. If you recently scolded him, he scours your face to see if you're still mad because he needs to know how you feel. You matter. Your mood changes his world of it. If you're in a good mood, he can relax and play with his trucks. If you're upset with him, he wants to make up. He may not show it, but he does. He won't show it if he's 14. That's your PSA for now. Because you are the center of his small world. He needs you to like him again. You, no one else. Because once you're happy with him, he can go about his business and life will feel good again. He can focus on school, get his homework done, pay attention during his basketball game. That is the power you have. And that power comes from the fact that in this one child's life, your child's life, who you are matters as much as life itself. You are loved. I want you to feel good about who you are as a mother because you should. That's another thing that I've learned about you as I've watched you over the years. You need to feel good about the job that you're doing, because if you're like most American moms, you are far too critical of the job you're doing. I know this because I can see that being a great mom matters to you. You want to get it right and assess your performance daily. What you need to know is that you assess your performance far more critically than your kids do. They just want you. Kids don't care if you're thin or plump. They don't care if you make brownies from scratch or from a box or if you buy them. They just want to eat the brownies with you. Feeling good about your value to them is important because the better you feel, the better your relationship with them will be, and the happier both of you will be. Sounds simple, but understanding our value and then feeling good about the mothers that we are, or maybe even saying it out loud, is one of the toughest challenges we mothers face. Let me back up introduce my family really quickly. My husband Andrew and I have been married for 23 years. We have 6 kids who've been homeschooled all the way through. Our oldest is the tallest girl. She's 22, and she just graduated from Franciscan University of Steubenville with a degree in English. Allison, in the pink dress, is our 20-year-old. She attends Savannah College of Art and Design, and she's studying illustration. Drew is 18, he just finished his freshman year of college, also at Franciscan. He's studying economics and philosophy. So they've been homeschooled all the way through. I was just chatting with someone right before we started. We started homeschooling mostly because I just had this really strong hunch that we should. I didn't really know anybody who homeschooled. I read some blogs, remember those? I read some blogs from homeschoolers that kind of painted a vision for me that was like, ooh, I think I want that. But we didn't know it. My family and my husband's family were like, why are you ruining your children? Don't you want them to be normal? I know, right? Now you're like, I don't know. Elena and I went to the beach last night, and we were like, why do people say homeschoolers are weird? We're the most normal people on this beach right now. Claire's 12, and Emerson and Becca are identical twin boys who are 10. And I always like to show you a real picture because this is the one I put on my Christmas card. I paid a fortune for it. It was a very stressful event to get everyone to coordinate and show up without crying at the same time. So let me just back up a little bit. This is like, you can't really see that one on the left very well. They're all piled up on the stairs. One child's eating the other, I think. This one on the right, lest you think that is a children are a blessing and a heritage from the Lord kind of a smile. What I did is I asked my oldest to please take a picture and send it to her father, who was home late from work. I was like, you know that providing for the family thing you're doing? If you could just wrap that up back home. That would be great. I really struggle. I have a hunch that a lot of us struggle at certain times in motherhood more than others. You know, like certain stages. Man, I had a really hard time with babies, and that was sort of unfortunate because I had a lot of babies all at one time. There was a lot of character growth. Apparently, I needed a really strong, refining fire. I'll tell you one of the memories that I have early on in motherhood. I just have the older 3 at this point. We were going to Moss, which was my favorite day of the month because, like, you got to interact with humans, like grown humans, you know? No, they are all humans. They all live this. Humans who could talk to me back that was about something other than, like, you know, little people things. And we were late. I don't remember. Maybe there was a blowout. I don't know. We were late. Must have said, I don't know what I said to my children to get out the door. I'm sure it wasn't kind because we're on our way in the car and it's quiet in the back. The kids must have been like 5, 3, and 1, something like that. And Audrey, my oldest, says, Mom, you know how you always say children are gifts from God? Yes. Do you want those gifts? No, can you feel it? I can feel it in my body. I can feel it right now. I just suck a punch of it. I remember her voice exactly. I remember the road I was on. I remember the way the light was slanting in. And I remember thinking, I think I'm getting this wrong. My 5-year-old just asked me if I wanted her. You expect this something, okay, after we have more kids, all gifts from God. I met Bed Bath and Beyond with them all. I don't know why. That was the first mistake, right? I don't know what I was thinking. And the clerk, the girl working the desk must have been like 17 or something. And I like walk up. We got like our stroller that has 100 babies in it, and we're walking up. She's like, oh my gosh, are these kids all yours? I'm like, yeah. I was kind of like, yeah, like, you know, I did that. Like, just, you got to take that when you can, right? And she was like, did you want all of them? Like, right there. I wish I was as witty as my husband, because he was like, what you should have done is looked at her and been like, I wanted this one, not that one. This one, I don't know. What kind I'll tell you though, I can remember that day in the minivan when Audrey said, "Do you still want these gifts?" Because it was like a watershed moment for me, where I realized I get to choose the kind of mom that you remember. There's a lot of things that are outside of our control. One of the things that is inside of our control is how we look at, talk to, and interact with our kids. It's hard, but it is the one thing that's in our control. And I realized, if I want my child to grow up knowing that I loved being with her, I've got to change something. Something has to change here. I am 100% convinced, without a shadow of a doubt, that the most important, the key to a successful homeschool is a peaceful, content mother or father. My husband does a lot of homeschooling. He always feels left out, and I give this talk. The key to success, because if we are peaceful and happy and joyful, then our kids feel loved and safe and seen, and they know that they're a part of that source of joy. And I think that is a gift no teacher could give our kids. Actually, our kids could have any teacher, but they only get one mom. So we have this really unique opportunity. They might not remember all the things that we learned. They won't remember all the things that we learned, right? I spent so much time memorizing this one history timeline when my oldest ones were little. And I lived and died by this thing, right? This is going to be, my kids can't recite 3 words right now, right? So some things they can remember and recite really well. They've got that whole chip the glasses and crack the plates thing down from The Hobbit still, so I don't know why some things stick and some don't. But they might not remember all the different things we teach them, but they definitely remember the way we made them feel. And the good news is, you set the tone in your homeschool. And also the bad news is, you set the tone in your homeschool, right? I always like to think it's useful for us to imagine ourselves as a thermostat and not a thermometer. Because a thermostat is the thing that we set, right? You change the thermostat and it changes the temperature of the room. So we blast the air in here so that it's nice and cool. I know some of you are cold, but for me, I'm thank you, because I'm just dying up here the other day. And then if we change the thermostat, it sets the tone for the room, because it sets the temperature, right? The thermometer, you use a thermometer to see what the temperature is. So a thermometer will tell us this room is 70 degrees, but it's just reacting. We don't want to be reacting. And actually, we have, I think, the singular power in our homeschools to be the thermostat. Have you ever noticed that? Have your kids ever had a better homeschool day than you did? Probably not. It's kind of weird, right? I have this commitment in my house now to be obnoxiously cheerful. I don't think my family always appreciates it like they should. But it's because I know that if I'm in a bad mood, no one's mood is going to be better than mine. We're the thermostat. We're setting the thermostat. So what can we do? Because we're all now feeling really guilty, right? Because you're all thinking about oh yeah, that thing I said 3 days ago. Yeah, me too. I still remember one that happened 20 years ago. Well, maybe not. 18 years ago. And I can feel it in my body. I remember it so much, right? I want to share with you the most powerful tool I know for becoming a more pleasant mom. I've got some quick tips we're also going to get to, as long as I don't ramble on too long. We're doing okay on time. But this tool is easily, I think, the most powerful way for you to become, you don't have to be obnoxiously cheerful, but to be more pleasant, be the thermostat, to be a little bit more able to retain, be the thermostat in your home even when things go awry. First, I'm going to explain how your brain works, because I need to how our brains all work. And then I'm going to walk through this slowly. So don't stress, by the way, I'm going to run through these slides really fast. Then it's going to sit up here for a while with all the dots filled in, so don't feel oh no, she changed it and I missed it. Don't worry about it. Okay, so here, we need to understand the reason that we do things without fail, or why we do things. And without fail, the reason that we do things is because of the way we feel. Let me show you what I mean. And this is all based on cognitive behavior theory, but there's tons of books on this. I'm just going to give you a summary. I think you're going to feel oh yeah, that is exactly what happens. Okay, so usually something happens, and then you have a thought, you feel a certain way, you act based on that feeling, you get a result, which causes more things to happen. Now, let me walk through that step by step with an actual example. So, something happens. Usually this circumstance, the thing that happens in this pink bubble of something happens, is oftentimes outside of your control. And it never really happens on its own. So this might be, I don't know, Tuesday in your homeschool, and maybe you just got some bad news or like an overdue bill or something, right? And maybe you and your husband got in an argument before you left for work, so that's great. That bodes really well for your day, right? And a kid is, maybe you were up all night with a teething toddler, and there's a toilet overflowing, and then one of your older kids comes to you and says, I lost my math book. Now, you don't have control over most of the things I just mentioned, right? Maybe something big even happened. Maybe your husband lost his job. Now, that's like a major stressor. We don't have control over a lot of the circumstances that happen. The teething toddler, the overflowing toilet, arguing with our husbands because we all do it, right? The math book gets lost. This is just the circumstance. This is just what happens. We usually then, what happens? Like, just call it out to me, like, when your kid loses math book, what would you do? What would your honest response be? Yeah, you see the same. Yep. I have a friend who would not yell, but who would like give a death glare like you've never seen before, and then stomp out of the room, right? Some of us are louder than others. I might say something unkind. I might say something like, seriously, why can't you get it together? Why can't you ever find your stuff? If you only put it away where I told you to put it, I didn't make that math shelf over there for my health, right? Like, I might say things like this. But what happens is, I usually think something happens, my kid loses his math book, and then I do something. We usually think that's what happens. If he didn't lose the math book, I wouldn't have lost my cool. If this teenager didn't sass back at me, I wouldn't have lost my cool. If my husband would have helped more around the house, then I wouldn't have lost my cool. We think this thing makes us do something. We're reacting. But actually, there's something else that happens. Same thing, same circumstance, all the same things I said, plus your child comes up to you and says, I lost my math book. So before you actually did anything or said anything, you actually felt something. So how did you feel? Frustrated, irritated, angry, sorry, I missed another one. Beat down, yes. Overwhelmed, worried. Mm-hmm. So, interestingly, almost every action we take as humans, we can pin back to a feeling that happened right before it. So, I mean, this is true for the good things we do and for the not so good things we do. So there's always like a feeling that just precedes an action. And if we feel badly, we usually act badly. We know this with our toddlers. We forget that this is still true, even when we're 42, right? Okay. There's actually something else that happened. And this part happened so crazy lightning fast, you probably didn't even notice it. In fact, you have 6,000 thoughts a day. And most of them are running around in your head like unsupervised toddlers. And you don't even know that you have them. And what actually happens is the feeling that you felt, irritation, anger, beat down, frustrated, those didn't come from nowhere. You had to have a thought first. How do I know this? Well, because if your child lost their math book today and you weren't home and didn't know about it, you wouldn't be frustrated by it, right? I know that when I'm at a grocery store, my toddler starts throwing a fit, I'm like angry and embarrassed and frustrated. Like, I hope nobody here knows me. Right? Like, I hope the pastor's isn't here, right? Those are the things that we're thinking. But there's actually a thought that happens. And you know what? There's kids freaking out in the grocery store right now. And I am not at all bothered by it. Well, it's because you have to have a thought before you have a feeling. The child losing their math book didn't make you feel angry. Kid throwing a fit in the grocery store, they're with your husband and you're not even there, didn't make you angry. You weren't at home getting angry when the kid throwing their fit didn't make you angry. in between. So there was a thought that happened. Your child loses their math book. What's the thought that you think might happen in between that and you feeling frustrated, angry, beat down? Buy another one? My stuff should be more organized. You're sitting back here. This is taking more of my time. This shouldn't be my problem. What else? What? This is going to cost more money. I'm not training them well. Yeah, that guy over there. Why do I have to do everything myself? Yes. Are they ever going to be responsible? Am I ever going to get my act together? Is my house ever going to be organized? If the stuff is there? Am I ever going to be good enough at this homeschooling that my kid can find their flipping math book before math class? Because I've been up all night with the baby and I have a million things going on. These are the things that happen in our house, in our mind. They happen so fast we don't even know it. And we go from, my kid loses their math book to, I don't know, they're going to become like a serial killer in the San Francisco penitentiary in like a second. My kid's never going to be responsible. We're playing Monopoly, and I've got a 10-year-old right now who cheats, like, every time. And I'm like, well, maybe there's hope for the other twin. We go from like 0 to 1,000,000 so fast. We don't even know we're having those thoughts, but tell me, how possible do you think it is if you have the thought, I'm no good at this, if only my house was more organized, if only my kids would listen, if only they do what I told them to do, why is this my problem, why do I have to, I'm going to spend more money on this math book? There's no possible way to go from that thought to a feeling that's helpful toward making you act better, right? So the negative thought gives you a negative feeling, which gives you a negative action. And what that ends up doing, you have a negative thought that makes you feel a certain way, never good, right? Like, just always frustrated, irritated. Most often, I actually think that the thoughts that we have, I bet 90% of them, and even the ones that you threw out today, all sound like, I'm failing at this. Like, if my house isn't organized, my kids, are they ever going to be responsible? That they are all centered around me being terrified that I'm failing at this most important job of my life, right? So then I feel a certain way, and then when I feel a certain way, I act on that feeling. Probably not my best parenting moment is going to come from this, right? And then we get a result. What's the result? What happens to your house in this situation? My kids cry, right? Yeah, somebody's crying. I'm crying. They're crying. Everybody's crying. I'm like texting my husband from the bathroom, like, I'm ruining your children. It's like, great. Good job, Mom. Right? You know, like, try and give me a pep talk. We get a result, probably not a great one. Probably your kid isn't going to be like, you're right, Mom. I'm going to be so much better at putting my math book away today. Especially because we probably didn't say something that was super kind. And then what happens is we get a result that, and then the next day happens, and we've like taken a bunch of debits out of our relationship bank account with our kid because we didn't behave well and they didn't behave well, we didn't treat each other well. And something happens probably very much along the lines of, your kid loses their spelling book. And the whole thing starts again. And the whole cycle happens again, and it's a whole fresh opportunity for us to feel like, why am I failing at this? And there is no possible way for us to be the pleasant, cheerful, patient, kind, inspiring moms who enjoy being with their kids in this situation. So, here's the bad news. You don't have control over most of the things on this chart. And the good news is you have control over the one most important one that makes all the other dominoes fall. And that is this one, that you have a thought. And so what we're going to talk about is how to take your thoughts captive for Christ. I have the verse reference here. Let me see if I do. I do somewhere in here, so when I find it, it's in one of the Corinthians. The verse of we're taking our thoughts captive to Christ and making them obedient. Listen, if you're having a thought that's, I'm a failure, why can't they, why can't I, this isn't my job, when are we ever going to be able to, these kids are going to be failures. Are those thoughts from God? We know they're not from God. There's no possible way those are the thoughts that the Holy Spirit is giving us so that we can raise our children in a way that imitates His love. So we have to take those thoughts. Think about those thoughts as being, and again, you're having 6,000 of them a day. Most of the time you don't even know what they are because they happen so fast. And they're like unsupervised toddlers running around in your brain. So just imagine like plucking the toddler up and putting them in a high chair. That's what we're going to do today. We're going to put that toddler in a high chair. We're not going to take them captive. That feels a little extreme. Although some days, right? We're going to put that toddler in a high chair and we're going to help ourselves think something different. Something more true. Because one of the funny things that happens with all those thoughts that are running through your mind is that we default to thinking of them as facts. But they're actually, none of the ones that we mentioned were facts, right? My kid's never going to be responsible. That's just not a fact. There's plenty of kids who lose things all the time that are very responsible adults, right? I'm terrible at this. If only my house was more organized. None of these, all of these things we just feel like are, if I was better, more disciplined, more consistent, skinnier, we have a whole bunch of things that we think, then I would get this right. None of them are facts, they're all just thoughts. And it's really, really helpful to know that not all of them are true. Most of them probably aren't. And we have the opportunity to take those thoughts captive and make them obedient to Christ. So for me, I will think, if I can, usually you can't do it in the moment. It usually happens like at night, when I'm like getting ready for bed, and I'm thinking about how terrible the afternoon went and how I wish I had done things differently. And I'll try to pinpoint, what was I feeling right before I said that really not nice thing? And then what was the thoughts what were the thoughts I was having? Is there a better thought? So here's the thought that's really helpful for me. This thought, I think, is helpful for 80% of the negative moments in my own homeschool. And that is, this is the work. Now hear me out. If you were to go into a restaurant for dinner tonight, and maybe you're with your husband, or you're going to have a date night, and the waitress was sitting in there, and she's scrolling her iPhone and looked super annoyed that you came in. She's like, "What do you want?" I'm like, "A table, please." You're like, "This is the job, right? That's actually the job. You came here, that's the job." Okay, so often in our homeschool, we're irritated by the things that are our actual job. For example, if you have a heaping mound of laundry in your living room, you probably think, if I was a better homemaker, that would be put away. But actually, this is the job. If your teenager says something sassy to you, you think, if I was a better mother, they wouldn't be speaking to me that way. Except, if they never sassed you, and your kids never cried, and no one ever disobeyed or cheated during Monopoly, and if they knew how to read, and if they did their math lessons without crying, there would literally be nothing for you to do. This is the job. Our job as homeschooling parents is to be professional problem solvers. Basically, your job is to wake up and present things to your kids that they do not know and do not know how to do. Take care of the house as it's unraveling to ravel it back up so that it can unravel again tomorrow, right? This is actually the work. So if I think to myself, okay, this is the work, oftentimes that's enough if I can get myself there, if I can stop and go actually let me tell myself the truth. This is the work. This is actually the job that I signed up for. The laundry pile is not proof that I'm not good at homemaking. The laundry pile is proof that people live here. And this is the work of making sure they have clean clothing to wear. This is the work of feeding my family dinner. If I'm irritated and tired at the end of the day, I'm like, why just make making dinner? Then I'm gonna be irritable. And then when a kid comes in and interrupts me, I'm like, what? I'm trying to just make dinner, right? But if I can tell myself, oh, this is the work of feeding my family, I actually want this. I want my kids to eat a homemade dinner. I want to eat a family meal together. Maybe not that homemade, right? I want my children to have clean clothes to wear. So this is the work. I actually want to do this laundry. I want to do this spelling lesson with my kids. I want my kids to be confident spellers someday. I don't love this part, but I really want this. This argument I'm having with my husband, I want this too. Because all relationships and marriages that last a long time go through hard stuff. So I want to go through the hard stuff with him. So because I want this. I want this marriage, I want these kids, I want this life, and this is the work. Now, if I can remind myself of that thought, something else happens. So let's just rewind again. And we have the same situation. I don't remember how I painted it before, but like we're up all night with the teething baby. Bad things happen, and then someone loses their MacBook, right? Now, if I can have the thought, okay, this is the work, and stop myself from believing the lies that this means I'm a bad homeschooling mom, or I'm not organized enough, or a good homeschooling mom, like the one at my co-op, definitely never has this happen. If I can just stop all of that garbage from happening and go, okay, this is the work. This is the moment I'm being given grace for right now. Then I have a different feeling. For me, that feeling is more like capable, or at least purposed. Like I have a reason for being here. Like, oh, it's a good thing I'm here. Because if I wasn't here and they lost their MacBook, that wouldn't be so great. I feel calmer. I feel less like a failure and more like I just have something to do. Oh, this is my job right now. This is what I'm supposed to do. I thought I was supposed to go clean the bathroom, but instead I'm supposed to help this kid find their MacBook. Or I do need to go feed the baby so I can look at my child and say, because now when we're feeling a little better, we act based on that feeling. So I might be able to then look at my child and say, oh man, I hate it when I lose stuff. Which is true, I do hate it when I lose stuff. And how does the child feel instead of, why do you always lose your stuff, right? It's like, I always lose my stuff. Oh man, I hate it when I lose stuff. I can't help you look for it right now because I need to feed the baby and make this phone call, but I will help you look for it this evening and then we'll just have to do your math tonight. Or, I don't know, maybe, you know what? Okay. Emerson lost his MacBook. I have 5 Skittles for anybody who finds it. That works in my house all the time. And then someone finds it and everybody gets Skittles because everybody was running around helping. Otherwise you'll have more tears and you'll be like, Sarah, that did not work. I can act better if I feel better. I can probably even smile at my child sometimes. I mean, let's not push this too far, right? But I definitely can keep myself from saying something unkind or rude or something I'm going to regret later. And then what happens is I get a result, and that result is that my child bears witness to what happened, how I'm acting in a moment of stress. There's also a result that maybe they get the natural consequence of having to do math instead of playing outside that afternoon like they wanted to because we didn't find their MacBook in time. They get a result that's much better than me hiding in the bathroom, scrolling Instagram, eating chocolate and crying while they're out there crying because their mom just said something really not great, right? So we get this better result, and then what happens is the next day they lose their spelling book, but still, we know what we can do now, right? We can change. Again, you can't always change the circumstances. There are things that are going to happen this coming school year that you and I don't know that's coming, right? We have no idea what's next in store. That's okay. Because regardless of what happens in the circumstance level, what happens in the next level is that we have a thought. And we have been told, I am really hoping it's in here. Nope, it's still not. Maybe I flew right through it when I was, okay, if I can find it, maybe somebody else will find it. It's in, I think it's in 2 Corinthians, but the verse that we can, what's that? 10:5, 2 Corinthians 10:5, excellent. So we then can take our thoughts captive to Christ, and remember, so we're not lying to ourselves, we're actually telling ourselves the truth. We're actually telling ourselves the truth about what we're actually doing here. And what we're actually doing here is the work that God put in front of us.
And sometimes we wake up and think, I know this at least is true for me, you'll have an idea of how my day is going to go, and so anything that deviates from it feels like, how often do you feel like your kids are throwing a monkey wrench in your homeschool day? Same, but isn't that weird? Like the whole homeschool day is with children. Like, if it wasn't for, homeschooling would be easier without children, that is true. But the whole reason we're here is for the children, so it's kind of funny, right? C.S. Lewis has this quote, and I don't know it off the top of my head, it's word for word, but it's basically, there's no such thing as an interruption. You're only interrupted from what you thought you were going to get to do. But God already knew what your day was going to look like, right? So it's kind of funny to think of it that way. I'll think my kids are interrupting me from, or this losing the math book is interrupting me, or the toilet overflowing is interrupting me, and I mean, I'm pretty sure God's like, I saw that coming. This isn't an interruption. It's your day. This is your life. This is your work. And sometimes I think we let the voice of, I should have, I could have, because we're so worried, because we love our kids so much and this matters so much to us, we don't want to fail. Obviously, we don't want to fail. We don't want to fail our kids. We don't want to fail at this thing. But instead of, as I read to you from that Meg Meeker passage earlier, if you can feel better as a mother, you'll act better as a mother. You'll get better results. That's what we're actually going for. And if we really stop to back up to say, how do I think that telling myself I'm failing at homeschooling, or that I'm not being enough, or if only I was, fill in the blank, if only we had a bigger budget, if only I had the right curriculum, if only I was more disciplined, if only I was more consistent, if only I was nice, like that one lady at our homeschool club was always nice to her children, if only, I shouldn't tell you this story, but there was, I just remembered it right now, we had just joined our homeschool club that we're in now. My twins at the time were probably 4, 3, I don't know, and they were so naughty. And so I was in charge of like this group, I think there were 4, because I think it was the 4-year-old group. And I picked up one of my twins and I carried him out into the hallway and put him down probably a little more firmly than I should have. And I was like, if I hear you say that again, and one of the sweetest homeschooling moms of 11 comes waltzing behind me, and I immediately went, he's my kid. like, I would not speak this way to any of your children, but my kid. That's kind of weird, right? But the way that we treat the people that we love the most is oftentimes worse than the way we treat the grocery clerk who checked us out at the grocery store. And this is what we have to do. We have to stop and go, okay, wait, what's my goal? My goal is that I want my kids to feel loved and seen and known by me, because I know that's how they feel loved and seen and known by God. And so how can I make it more likely that I will be the kind of parent that I want them to remember? And it's not by telling yourself that you've been, you're not good enough, or you haven't, if you were only more, fill in the blank. Something better. And even though we can't control most things. Now here's, I'm just realizing, oh no, here we go. I was like, I could have sworn that I had quick wins in here. Even if you know this, I just want to say that this idea of taking your thoughts captive for Christ isn't something that you're going to go home and be like, now all my thoughts are positive. That's not going to work. You're probably going to be like, I wish I didn't know this because I didn't know how some of the thoughts you probably are having are far more negative than you think. I got into the habit of noticing like at a certain time of day, especially in my homeschool, was like the worst part of my day. So I started just jotting down anything that came to mind, and I was a little astonished at how negative they were, because I usually think of myself as a pretty positive person. When you see them written down, you're like, oh my word. How am I possibly supposed to love on these children if I feel this way? So instead of shaming ourselves, though, we can go, okay, this is why we've been told to take our thoughts captive for Christ. I just want you to know it's not something that you're going to be like, this week you're going to be like, good, I've got it, I'm golden. But I think it's worthwhile, and I think if the next time that you say something unkind, or slam a door, or yell, or act in any way that you wish you hadn't, you can go, oh yeah, unsupervised toddlers. Let me see if I can take those thoughts captive for Christ and remind yourself this is the work. Now you need something, a few quicker wins than that, because this is going to happen like tomorrow, and you're going to need something faster. So I wanted to give you 3 quick wins. You can always find something to praise. This is another thing that C.S. Lewis said, that he would be like the most boring sermon ever, and he would try to sit there and think of something to praise. Like, what is something this pastor is doing really well? And there's always something. There's always something to praise in our kids. Because we care so much, and because we feel the responsibility of them succeeding so much, and because we spend every blessed minute with them, we know all of our children's weaknesses, and most of us are pretty adept at pointing them out. But we're not always very adept at pointing out, praising them. Like, there's always something. So oftentimes, before I say the thing that's like, needs to happen, so maybe I need to tell my 18-year-old son, for example, theoretically speaking, that he can't stay in bed till 2, just saying, I might say something to praise him first. Like, hey, thank you so much for mowing the lawn without being asked yesterday. Also, 2 o'clock, not working for me. You need to be up a lot earlier than that, right? So there's always something that you can praise. And our brains are wired to look for what's wrong. This is just the way God made our brains. It's good. It's why, like if you were at a zoo and you were looking at a bear enclosure and there were like 3 bears and 2 of them were doing normal bear things in the bear enclosure and one of them was climbing out, like, you'd be like, that's not right? Like, this is right, this is good, this is why our brains were made this way. I remember our family went to, there's this historic hotel in Spokane, where I live, that is always decorated to the hilt for Christmas. And they have like a festival of trees in there. And so we went one year, there's like, 30 trees, all gorgeous, all around this hotel lobby. And one tree was on its side, like one had fallen over. And we walked into the Davenport, and every single person in this giant hotel is staring at the one that fell. And I thought, that's so funny. Like, I was too, right? I thought, those poor decorators, they're probably like, could you look at the other 29 for a minute? Like, we spent a while on these, but we're actually wired to see what's wrong. Now, if you know that about the way your brain is wired, you'll at least know that that's why it feels harder to praise. That's why it feels harder to see in your kids. Like, if I asked you right now, tell me something that's not working in your homeschool, I bet y'all could come up with something pretty quick. And if I said, what's something that's working really well in your homeschool? You'd be like, give me a second. And that's because that's the way our brains are wired, to look for what's wrong. So just knowing that is really helpful. It also works with husbands too. If you find something to praise, just saying. Here's a very practical tip. It's far better than you think it does. You can say almost anything to your children in a British accent, and they'll think you're wonderful. Even if you're like, you're a dunderhead. Why do you never do your chores on time? They're like, laugh. And it gives you just a minute to like, I don't think this works in England, so I wouldn't try it there, but my oldest daughter said, she's like, I know when mom starts walking around the house speaking in a British accent, it's like, lay low. It also works for yourself. Speaking of, like, this is the work, you can, if you find yourself in the bathroom eating chocolate, scrolling Instagram or something, I have no experience with this. In a moment of frustration, if you can remind yourself, oh yeah, this is the job, I should speak in a British accent right now. You can look at yourself in the mirror and say, spit spot, and off we go. It is remarkably invigorating. You should try it. The last thing, and this is also a cue, my husband knows this one.
Guys, I'm gonna do it.
That often. I hum when I'm afraid the words that will come out are less sweet than the humming. And I just need, I mentioned this in the story I told yesterday, but I just need like a minute to remind myself that I'm probably feeling the way I'm feeling because of unsupervised toddlers in my head. And I don't have the wherewithal to think about those right now, so I'm just gonna hum to give it a minute. So often I have found, and I really feel like I wish I could go back 18 years to that Mott's morning and tell myself, hum when you get those kids in the car. Because whatever I said did some damage. And I could have avoided it by humming. Maybe, I don't know, I might have been too sleep deprived to speak in a really good British accent, so I don't know. Remember that the key to a successful homeschool is a peaceful, happy mother, but also remember that you're gonna get it wrong again and again and again and again, and that's okay, that's all part of it. You're not gonna leave here and be like, I am now a more pleasant mother. Because I can almost guarantee you that by bedtime tonight, you're gonna be like, that was not very helpful of a session. There was several years where in my old homeschool group, several of us would get together at this camp, this cabin. It was not a cabin, it was like a lake house. She called it her cabin. She was in our homeschool group. And she would invite all of us out for a weekend, a mom's weekend. We said we were planning for our co-op. We didn't do all that much planning, but that's what we told our husbands, so that we could go. And I live in Washington State, so it's like this house on a lake. There's like evergreens and pine trees just everywhere, and all this nature. And it was one of the first times I'd been really away from my kids overnight. And the first morning after we'd been there, I thought, oh, I'm gonna go for a walk. And everybody else was sleeping. So I get in my earbuds and I head out on the trail that's nearby for a walk. And I hear like a lot of snapping, cracking of branches and things. And I thought, oh, there's many deer out here. There's a lot of deer. And I keep going, I keep hearing it, but I'm like listening to my music and I'm just walking. I was gonna say running, no, it was such a lie. I was running. And all of a sudden I hear this really loud crack. And I take out my earbuds, step to the side just in time for this massive female moose to step up right in front of me. She was probably like, I don't know, I feel like every time I tell this story, it gets a little bit closer. Probably like from me to that trash can, maybe. Have any of you seen a moose in real life? Yeah. So the rest of you, like whatever you're imagining, they're bigger than that. They're huge. I did not know this at the time, and I'm very glad I didn't know this, but they're also extremely dangerous. They're the #1 cause of death at Yellowstone National Park, for example. There's nothing more dangerous for, speaking of moose, than a female moose around June when her babies have just been born. So this is great. I didn't know any of this. I just see this big moose, and I don't know what the right response is. So, like I've seen some of those articles or whatever, they're like, if you see a bear, you're supposed to just, is it like play dead? Or is it, no, you're supposed to make yourself big? That's right. And it's like a mountain lion, you're supposed to play dead or something. I don't know. I wouldn't be good at that. I don't think they respond to my British accent either. So I did exactly, you're not supposed to do the mouth. Oh, so this is your case in case you ever run into a moose, like in downtown Ontario, I don't know. They don't have peripheral vision. And so if you get absolutely silent and just move out of their line of sight, they'll think you've gone, and then you can wait for them to move on and they can leave. Okay, that is not my natural response to seeing a moose. My natural response was to freeze and like just scream out this prayer at the top of my lungs. And I'm seeing like headlines, right? Like, mother of 6, trampled by a moose while she was planning for her homeschool. I turn around and I start to run, and the moose starts running after me. And I freeze. And it would freeze. If I froze, it would freeze. If I moved, it would move. And it was a lot faster than me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna die out here in the world. Nobody even knows where I am. We didn't even finish planning for co-op. Nothing happened. Anyway, I'm still screaming out. I don't know if the moose was like overwhelmed by my holiness or something, but I'm screaming out this prayer, just backing up slowly, till I get enough distance that I hightailed it out of there. Now, the only reason I'm telling you this is because if you were to ask a park ranger, say, what should you do if you see a moose? They would say exactly the opposite of what this lady did right there. Be silent and get out of the way. Do not run. I'm like, scream, run, right in the direct path of the moose. That's exactly what my instincts were. Here's the thing. Exactly like that, in your homeschool, in your home, not even just in your homeschool, just in your home, probably today, definitely tomorrow, and for sure within the next week, you're going to say something, do something, act in a way that you're like, dang it, this is not the kind of homeschool parent I want to be. And that's okay, because he loves to save us. This is what grace is for. This is the distinct, unique opportunity our kids get to see. How often do you think a teacher at a school has the opportunity to make as many mistakes with our children as we do, but who repents and says, I'm so sorry. Let's try that again. We have this unbelievable opportunity to, even in our worst moments, turn it around and say, you know what? Let's make an example. Let's give my child an example of what it means to ask for forgiveness, to mess up, so that my daughters grow up and don't think they need to be perfect mothers, and my sons don't grow up and think they need to marry a perfect wife. My sons are good. They're going to be ready. Because they've seen it, and they know what it means to be real, and to be human, and to be loved by God, and to be enough, because this is the work that we are called to. And regardless of what you bought and didn't buy at this conference, or what you overhauled or didn't overhaul, or if you decided to color code everything before you leave, regardless of anything you've decided to do or not do, you already have everything you need to be a pleasant homeschooling parent. Because you have grace, and you have the work you've been called to. And if we can remember to, in the moment, do something quick, right? Find something to praise, and when that's too hard, speak in a British accent, and you can't manage that, hum. Let the moment pass. And then later, ask yourself, is there a thought I need to take captive for Christ? What is happening in my brain that's making me feel and act this way? And is it true? And is it good? And is it beautiful? And is it what God has called me to in this beautiful calling that we do absolutely know we're supposed to be doing? And if that's true, then every single person in this room has everything they need to teach from peace and rest in their homeschool, and to love their children well, and to have an amazing opportunity to love on and develop their kids in exactly the way that he wants. And we'll never be enough, and we'll never have enough, and that's great, because he never asks that of us. And he offers us grace every morning fresh for the task. All right. I am going to be out here, let's see. Oh, it is right on time, 5 o'clock. This is the end of the conference. Is there another half an hour in the exhibit hall or something? There's another half an hour. I'm going to stay here. No one's in this room, I don't think, after me. Pretty sure. I'll stay here and chat with anybody who wants to chat. There are more, for my picture books, I've got bookmarks, stickers, all kinds of good stuff up here. Take as many as you like. And then also, this session actually is something I taught in my Circle with Sarah mentoring program at Aloud-Revival Premium, and I put together a sample of some other Circle with Sarah offerings as well. So if you want a free sample of that, just text GHC to the number 33777, or you can scan that QR code and I will send it to you. Thank you so much for coming, and God bless you all.
Alrighty guys, that was Sarah Mackenzie, and she's amazing. She's amazing. I talk to her every year, so I was saying, I don't know if you guys remember, with Bricky and Mom, we're best friends because I see him all the time at Disneyland. I said the same thing about her. She's great, and every year I go to every single one of her workshops.
Hope you guys enjoyed that workshop with Sarah Mackenzie. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to Cat Family Adventures. We will see you on the next adventure, guys. God bless you. Bye.